Order the planning and zoning meeting for August 19th, 2020. Let the record show we are missing Mr. Bush and President Decker. First order of business will be to approve the order of business. Mr. Hadley, is there any changes?
Mr. Chairman, there is not. Just a reminder that all the items on the timetable are public hearings.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or concerns about the order of business? If not, I would look for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve these.
Motion by Ms. Dukart.
Second.
Scott by Mr. Bullinger. Any further discussion on the order of business? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Order of business is approved. Second item on our order to approve today is the minutes of our previous session, which was June 17, 2020. Is there any changes to the meeting minutes or any discussion on them?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to approve as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the previous minutes?
Mr. Chairman, just one thing, that antenna issue we discussed at the last meeting, is that can be discussed under a work session?
It is.
Okay.
Ms. Winko is going to discuss the enforcement and kind of, I can give an update on where we are.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions or concerns? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the previous minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to our action items for the day. The first item is a future land use map amendment. This is to consider a future land use map amendment for from commercial to residential for a portion of lots 1 through 7, Block 5, Pinecrest First Edition. Mr. Hadley.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, what I suggest we do is we can talk about the plume and then obviously the PUD and the preliminary plat. The applicants here, those are all three items. There'd be obviously three separate motions. Staff reviewed them as a project, as one individual project. So the plume, our current future land use map includes this entire area as a commercial area. And that was based on our 2013 long-range plan. As you remember, Pinecrest was a pretty large development that was approved in that area. Never did move forward. These folks are some of the similar players in that, but the north portion has been sold off to someone of Pinecrest, so it's no longer part of that. Obviously, there's a residence in the middle of this, and then this is the southern portion along 15th that we're considering today. What they're asking for is a future land use map which would allow them to do a PUD overlay to include some residential. They're leaving some commercial, about a half, I believe. The applicant can give you the exact number of feet, but leaving about half commercial along the old truck route to be developed and accessed mostly off of 15th Street, because I don't believe we're going to give any more accesses off of there. And then the rest of it, they're designating as residential or R1 more predominantly. They want to do a loop drive, as you see in your preliminary plat, larger lot, single-family development. So the PUD is an overlay that basically allows them to mix those uses. And there's 16 proposed conditions that we worked through, staff, engineering, public works. So the product that, from a preliminary standpoint, works. But we have some discussion on whether or not this is the direction we want to go. I will back up and say the 2013 plan was good when it was put in. It hasn't really materialized in a number of the areas that we were hoping that it would. From staff standpoint, we've looked at balancing. We always kind of want more single family from the standpoint of bringing more families to our community. That will drive more commercial development. Now, this particular area is a tough one because we designated it commercial. Hasn't really moved forward, but Chairman and I were discussing that before the meeting, that this is a somewhat prime area. I think the Roars area probably is more prime, but This is a somewhat prime area and close location to the interstate for commercial development. Now, doesn't mean commercial development won't go there, but the big box kind of people obviously wouldn't locate here if this went through. So that being said, how this works is the future land use map designation is something that will be a motion on itself to move forward. We can only entertain those about every quarter is what we limit it to, and that's what our ordinance limits us to as far as addressing them. The PUD is a separate one as well. It's similar to a zone change, so basically you're basically designating that as a mixed use plan, and then the preliminary plat goes through this hearing. If this board approves it, then they're open to apply for a final plat, comes back to this board and then to the city commission. That's kind of the sequence. With that, the applicant does have a pretty good PowerPoint that they put together, and I think that maybe, unless you have specific questions of me on this right now, maybe have them do that, and then we can ask questions on the process and what your feelings are as far as moving forward.
Okay. Sound good, everyone?
Yep.
All right, well, if the applicant would like to come forward and present their...
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Thanks for having me. My name is Blake Carlson. I'm an architect with Design Resources Group and Paces Lodging out of Fargo. Representing the owner here, Pinecrest 40 LLC. And I'm happy to present this here this morning. I've been working with staff here for a few weeks, a couple months. It's been a little while, and just honing in at what we think and what city staff thinks would be a successful project. So I'll just kind of walk through some of our vision, some of our thinking, and then some of the details that we've kind of arrived at along with city staff. Show you some images here. So this is the location, as you are all familiar with, I'm sure. It's a beautiful area. It's quite striking, even just driving down I-94. You can see the pine trees there. It looks like a forest almost there from the interstate. And we're proposing a portion of it being residential lots. As Mr. Hadley mentioned, it was originally, the PUD was approved for a larger commercial area. I don't know all the dynamics in why that didn't work out, part of that being market, but the owners wanted to go a different direction and felt that a residential development would be a really nice fit for this area, especially with the trees. And so we'll keep coming back to the trees and just how that was kind of a driving force in our design. So just an aerial showing the rows of pine trees there. We're proposing a portion, the north two sections to be the residential, so commercial would be bordering the trees, or the residential area. Here's the conceptual master plan, as you can see. So we're showing 27 lots in there, organized around a loop, and the road is set up right in the middle of the tree line so that we can preserve as many trees as possible, so that every backyard essentially will have the trees. There's a pond there at the entrance, so you enter off of 15th, and you'll go past the stormwater pond, and you can go around the loop. So again, so with the trees, it was a little bit limiting on the lot depth that we could do. Originally, we had hoped to do a road that was like 28 feet wide with very kind of minimal width to it. After working through with staff, that wasn't feasible. But we're requesting the PUD so that we can do a little bit narrower than city standard. City standard's, I believe, a 70-foot right-of-way with a 40-foot road. Where we're at here is a 52-foot right-of-way with a 36-foot road, face of curb to face of curb, so 37 back of curb to back of curb. We're proposing one sidewalk on the inner loop there, and again, we're trying to maintain just a good depth of the lots. The lots on the north two areas are about 127 feet left after the right of way. So these, just in general, these lots are a little bit bigger than a standard city lot. We felt that this was would be a desirable kind of size. We've got some bigger lots on the end that are about an acre in size. The smaller ones are about a third of an acre. So again, the sidewalk, what we're proposing here is one sidewalk on the inside that would be connected down to 15th and across over to 30th Avenue. There's 8 different spots to get onto that inner sidewalk from the street. Something I didn't mention, on the street design, we're proposing that it would be just parking on one side of the street. So there'd be no parking signs on the inside portion of the street, so only parking on the outside. Just with the slightly narrower road width, that would work. We've done analysis on the turning radiuses, so it works with emergency vehicles as well as sanitation. This is a preliminary plat here showing the lot sizes. This is kind of evolved as we've been working with city staff to make something that they were comfortable with. The only item that maybe we're not quite on the same page with city staff as, I think it's in the report there, is just they had requested a sidewalk on both sides of the street. We're hoping to avoid that, just to keep that little more room so the lots don't get so narrow. That's our desire. City staff has their recommendation, so we bring it before you as the commission to make the call on that. We feel that that it would function just great with the one sidewalk, and again would prefer to leave the depth on the lots. So, as mentioned, future land use, we're proposing changing just this portion from commercial to residential. The outer lots would stay commercial. And then with the zoning change, it's currently zoned ag, so we're proposing to change to R1. This is a typical road section as I was talking about, so there'd be a 36-foot road, a 5-foot boulevard, and then a 5-foot sidewalk on the one side, and the other side would just have a 5-foot easement or right-of-way area for utilities. We'd also have an additional 5-foot kind of dry utility easement on each side of the road as well, but would be outside of the right-of-way. This I just put in this slide just for discussion's sake, as we are requesting a narrower than standard road in Fargo, which similar climate to Dickinson. We're doing a lot more narrower streets than you guys. Some of the traditional ones are 23 feet. Some of the newer ones 26, 30, and as compared to a 40-foot. So we think a 36 would be fine, even though it's a little bit narrower than your standard. So I guess with that, I'd like to invite up Kyle Kuntz. We've been working with him on just kind of determining what would be a good fit for the market here, just his expertise in the needs of the community here. So I'm going to have him come up and share a little bit.
Good morning. Again, like you said, Kyle Kuntz. Started working with the group, talking about the space. They had a few different conceptual plans from the beginning. Part of what Blake was talking about is the road design was talking about the lot size. I gave them, the full market on what's in Dickinson as far as lot square footages, lot widths. We kind of covered all the bases of number of permits pulled every year to how many available lots are in town. So we started on that. Part of getting into it and wanting to create, maybe a more private neighborhood, taking advantage of the trees, we got into it, and I said one of the things that a lot of residents would like is to get something a little wider. You get into some of our neighborhoods, the smaller ones are 65, 70 wide, some of them are 75, 80 wide. Being a little narrower depth-wise because of the tree rows in the back. Some of their smallest lots here are like 95, 98 wide. Some of them on the north end are 115 wide, giving the ability to, somebody that may want to have that little bit bigger garage on the house or do a bigger house with a bigger garage. That kind of came into the conceptual plan there. Ultimately taking advantage of the neighborhood and utilizing the trees on every lot was a huge part of it. You guys know the permit numbers probably better than I. When I sat down and talked with them earlier in the year and looked at the 17, 18, and 19 single-family building permits, obviously 19 was down, but there was also some factors. We had some spring weather, and we had a lot of things that just didn't hit the ground there, but we're probably a little bit behind our normal building curve. Even, Shirley can probably attest to this. There was times in 19 and beginning of 20 before the coronavirus hit, we were short on some inventory, and you could tell as some of the inventory came on, we had buyers there. So, we were talking about that. One of the biggest things that I enjoyed about this was trying to get that wider lot, and especially getting a little less depth with the trees. They definitely came through on that. So that's about all I have. Just wanted to kind of, the conceptual plan and the privateness of it. I think the buyers are there for a neighborhood like this. It's definitely unique to what we have available right now. So.
Mr. Kuntz, maybe I missed this. On the east side of that, there's some pretty good space in. Is that to remain commercial or?
Correct. Well, it's left blank now. I think through the process, Walter can maybe add to that. I think at one time this neighborhood did go all the way to 30th, but there was concerns having the houses backed up to 30th, that they kind of moved their conceptual plan off of 30th and kind of gives back up from there. So.
And Kyle, that's the tree rows are the buffer, right, between the commercial and residential?
Well, right, there is no trees running north and south there, but I'm sure, whenever that commercial would be developed, they'd have to come up with something there. There would be those 4 lots to the east that could be future commercial, I guess.
So how would they be accessed? Because there's no left-in turn from off of 30th, and there probably will
Yep.
never be one. So
right now, there's a private road, there's an easement there from the south lot that you can see it dashed in there, goes around. Yep.
so
And that was originally in there as part of the previous plat
so
as
this
well,
is,
or part of the previous.
so if we would develop commercial on the corner, let's say a gas station, they would have to use the same road as the residents to get in there.
They would, yep. Unless at a future date, there was talk of like a right-in, right-out on 30th. That's a discussion probably for another day if there'd be an openness to adding that. Right now, we know we don't have that, but we can still access from the south there.
Mr. Hadley, are we restricted by DOT on how many?
I believe it's our right-of-way. I'll clarify that with, I believe the DOT has given us the ability to put more access points in there, but I don't think that we're
But we could,
favorable for putting more in there. Is that correct, Ms. Monshik?
That is correct.
and we wouldn't tear the median out and allow a
Yeah,
cross there.
just north of this map, there's Pinecrest Parkway, which is a platted right-of-way that has the only access that's off of the old truck route on 30th there. I don't know that we would entertain another in that area. That would be something that engineering and obviously the planning commission and city commission would have to entertain through a final plat. But I don't think at this point, I think it's been conveyed to the applicant that they probably wouldn't get one, and I think staff is pretty much on the same page that it isn't a real good roadway to have a bunch of non-control, which means access points along it. I think, Mr. Chairman, also, we asked Mr. Kuntz, could you, in your experience with commercial real estate, I know you've been doing a lot of commercial stuff lately, the stuff along 15th as it exists, because that hasn't really changed from the original plat, and then the amended size parcels along 30th, how do you see those compare to what was there before, as far as a large commercial? I mean, is there a need for those size lots? Is there not? Do you see that area developing as a large commercial facility?
You know, obviously we saw Roars, they had some action right away as things have moved in there, and we all drive out there, you know, not a daily, a weekly basis. I guess my answer to that would just be it's a market-driven thing. I have clients come and go in and out of the market as far as, you know, anything from lenders to stores. You know, I think the census coming up is going to be a huge thing for some of them. As far as size of spaces, I don't have an answer for that, no, because I think we have a fairly good variety of sizes right now that could fit many needs. So I almost have to go back to it's a market-driven thing and timing.
Do you think that need's gone up at all?
I would say my conversations have gone up in the last 6 to 12 months, but I think there's a lot of things on the, you know, in the next 6 months that will determine what path they want to go.
Thank you. Sorry, I know it's a tough question.
My biggest concern, can I
Go ahead.
address it? Is if we have commercial on the east and those people's backyard is, those east lots are going to be hard to sell because it's going to be just like 15th Street East and Dickinson, where we have those big motels up there. Unless you put some buffer in there for them. Because I wouldn't want to buy myself a lot and then have a big motel looking into my backyard either, or anything that's 3-story high.
Those are 4-story.
Yeah,
Or
clearly,
four-story.
the most attractive lots are on, to the west there. We recognize that. Those are the lots that are gonna be, more valuable. Depending on what use would go on the east there, I could see some buffering happen there. I know, you know, I believe in the commercial code, there's, you know, if you get a conditional use, there could be a multifamily under commercial. Is that correct, Walter? So again, we don't know what the best use for that is, but that could be a use too, as a buffer, as a multifamily space. Obviously, that would have to be approved, but.
And I guess my other comment would be is, you know, in a situation like that as a planning commission is something like, you know, where limited commercial or community commercial, some of those zones are a little tighter, but you know, we have that where like Able is, Stevenson Funeral Home is. We have some of that going on over by the hospital between 8th and Fairway. You know, they're tighter zones, but they do protect, you know, that residential housing by limiting, you know, use, height, hours of operation, that kind of thing. So.
And I agree, we have a request for larger lots right now too. Another question I have is if the street is 36 feet and then I feel that both sides should have a sidewalk. I mean, we're requiring it all over Dickinson. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and again, that's what staff recommended, so I get the point. Again, where we were coming from is you're trying to maximize the lot size, not go too narrow, and our original concept was just a 28-foot road with no sidewalk. That would maximize the lots. We recognize that wasn't attractive to city staff. So we were hoping for a compromise. Both sides have been compromising on kind of this what you see before you. You know, again, that's kind of up to you guys on what you feel comfortable approving. We're asking for a compromise to do the one sidewalk, but I guess that's for your discussion.
Well, we're trying to develop a more healthier community, so walking is an important part of that too.
I guess I've had these conversations with staff, and my comments on this is, you know, I don't know if any of these mics are working or not, but our comprehensive plan was put in place to help us decide how the city is going to grow. And here we are looking to change this area at a time when it's a little bit slower. And I don't think it's, in my opinion, is the best use of this property. We're talking within 1,000 feet of the last exit we have coming into Dickinson. This is a major arterial road. I mean, any box store or any future development in commercial is going to look along 30th or the business loop coming in. We don't have anything on 22, you know, north anymore, the other major road. To me, just putting a residential subdivision this close to 30th Avenue makes absolutely no sense to me. It just, this is not what is the best use of this property. And this might not develop in 5 years, but we have to sit here as a commission and look ahead 20 and 30 years of what's best for Dickinson, not what's best tomorrow. I can't support changing this. You know, you guys maybe have a different thought on it, but I can't support it.
So just a question, Jason. So I guess a larger commercial development, that probably would mean ripping down most of the trees there. Is that a issue for?
It's not an issue for me. I mean, it's the best use of the property for the city of Dickinson. So to me, that's commercial. The stuff across the street, we own the stuff across the street. That's commercial. Stuff to the south is commercial. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to plop a residential subdivision in the middle of this area. And then who wants a gas station in their backyard, or like you said, a 4-story hotel at some point? I mean, most of these lots to the south and east will have a commercial structure in their backyard at some point. Plus, we're sharing a road. Every bit of that traffic for this commercial will share the same road as the residential subdivision. I mean, like I said, to me, it just does not make sense to change our future land use map for this.
Just for Jason, just for a quick question, in 13, when the land use map was made, was the middle school and all that there? Was that correct?
I believe so.
The middle school and the church up there, because
No.
that was part of the conversation, is just as we get up 30th, you know, typically around the school, probably hopefully be residential. And I mean, that's what we were kind of talking, as you get to that next light change, there's houses going on both sides of that road up on to the north.
I mean, we've master planned that acreage to the east, you know, of the middle school, and there's a bunch of residential in that area, you know, that's master planned right now. I mean, there's a bunch of residential master planned to the west of this, farther. I mean, that makes sense. It just putting this right out on 30th doesn't make sense, in my opinion.
This may be another, maybe just to respond a little bit here. You know, so to the north, there's a house to the north, so we're touching other residential with this development. It's, in my mind, it's sort of a buffer area, kind of in between a residential area and then commercial. We feel just with the trees helps with the buffering, and so we're still keeping commercial on the edges, but really just moving the line of where the residential is a little bit. So that's kind of our argument. Again, with utilizing the beauty of the trees that are there.
I mean, the house to the north is an existing house. And if Mr. Decker wants to come in someday and subdivide that, I highly doubt that's going to be residential.
Excuse me, to the north of Decker's house, that's all commercial also, correct?
It's master plan commercial, yeah. Or it's in our comprehensive plan.
It's still ag right now,
It's
or?
ag right now, yeah.
It's all, just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, with the PUD's been expired, and so reverted back to agricultural zoning at this point, but it still has the original plat. North of Pinecrest Parkway, which is north of Mr. Decker's house, that's all being purchased by one individual, I believe, and the intent up there right now is to build a house and a shop. Obviously, yes, it is still in our corridor, and it's designated it to go to commercial. At this point, I don't know that there's any desire, at least in the next number of years.
Mr. Chairman,
for
Mr.
that
Hadley,
to
what'd you
move
say
forward.
it was being purchased to use for?
I'm sorry, what?
What'd you say, oh, these mics aren't. What'd you say that was being purchased to use for north of,
North of Pinecrest Parkway, which is the approach, the only approach along 30th, which accesses that home. It's Mr. Decker's, not Mr. Decker, another Mr. Decker. North of that, all of that property is being purchased, I believe, for a home shop at this point. So
But-
it obviously is not at the highest
Right.
and best use either, but that's what it's being purchased.
But if he came in and wanted to subdivide that or split it into small lots, we'd be in the same conversation.
You'd have to go through the same kind of process that these gentlemen are going through right now, just because right now it's basically agricultural.
Right.
It does have a plat laid over the top of it, so there are existing lots that are buildable. There needs to be some infrastructure put in. We've put in, the other side of it, we've put in a lot of infrastructure up there at city cost that isn't being utilized by anyone. So, it's a tough question. I mean, I think the applicant said it correctly in that we've gone back and forth with a number of different options and a number of different ways of looking at this. They wanted to have residential all over 30th. We backed it up. It has been a bunch of compromises. Really where we are is they and staff need total direction on, if we're open or not open to do this, because staff tries to work with applicants as they come in to bring to something to the table that's actually worth, whether or not it's something that you approve, that's up to you. There are times when we not necessarily always agree, whether it be an applicant, whether it be the staff members, whether it be the board, and that's why you're here, because you consider it, make the decision, give the direction, and then we all kind of move forward after that direction. So if this is something you want to move forward with, then that's great. We can show you how to do that. If it's not, then I would suggest giving staff and the applicant, so they know what to do with their property, direction on what to come back to you with.
Commissioners, any other comments or questions?
How was this plotted out now for commercial? How many lots are there, commercial lots now?
Well, right now, honestly, except for the future land use plan, I mean, the plat that you see, that you have in your packet, all of the lots originally along 15th and the lots adjacent to 30th were all commercial to the top of the middle, or more,
To the middle?
more so, probably almost all of it, honestly, probably almost to the north-south portion of the loop there, at least, were designated commercial, and lots in the original Pinecrest. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm estimating. So basically, there was a lot of commercial in that area, and as you see, I mean, it's another issue that we have with developments that were approved back in the day when we were busy and we thought everything was going to explode. We didn't require roads, we didn't require anything in there, and if we did, it would have locked in what we had. So at this point, we're basically starting over. And we have some platted lots that can be sold, obviously, if they can get public utilities to them. You know, the ones along 15th obviously could be, zone changes could be individually brought in, and those could be developed as commercial. The ones on 30th have a little more of a challenge, whether this goes through or not, just because of access. Actually, if this doesn't go through, they have more of a issue because how do you get there?
Well, I mean, you
We'd
would,
have to come through the process.
I mean, yeah, and you would use this road to access those bigger parcels. I mean, we just don't normally zone like this. We don't normally zone R1 right up against commercial. I mean, does it happen? Sure, but it just, to me, it just does not make any sense. I mean, we're 1,000 feet from the interstate interchange. I mean, yes, maybe this is 15 years away, but could be a Sam's Club or it could be a Costco. We don't know, but that's the best use of that property. Our residential subdivision is not. You know, on the west side of those trees, possibly, maybe. Off of 30th that far, yeah, maybe that's a different conversation, but I don't think this property here makes sense, so.
Just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, for the commission, given that it's a PUD, it already has 16 proposed conditions. You could propose whatever kind of screen you wanted, if it was adequate. If it's not, that's fine as well, but we have done that in the past. Lion subdivision up north, if you remember, that was actually done, and it has some industrial neighbors, but basically multifamily and single family mix mostly, and that has a 6.5-foot fence put in by the developer to separate those. Not saying that that's adequate here, but I'm just saying it is something we've done in the past.
You know, and then,
Frederick?
yes,
Just
Mr.
to
Marshall.
answer an earlier question, I did look in our files for the original plat for Pinecrest. So that area where we talked about the private road for commercial, that kind of zigzags in here, that piece to the north and along the trees, that was one large lot. And then the lot configuration that's shown on this picture is pretty similar to what they have on the original plat. So there were 7 lots, 2 along 30th. The second one, that corner lot, then there's 4 adjacent lots to the west. So they're about 1.5 acres on the original plat, but that other piece was one single lot. I don't know if that helps your questions at all.
Thanks, thank you, Ms. Marshall. Commissioners?
I have mixed emotions.
Well, and
I don't like the front part, the east.
you know, with what the city's trying to do too, sidewalks on one side of the road, I mean, that just,
No.
I mean, we're going around and putting sidewalks in where they've never been before. I mean, I don't ever see, even in Sundance, we're putting sidewalks on both sides of the street. And that has narrower roads than this. I mean, so that condition, I couldn't get behind even if you guys agree to approve this. I mean,
Mr. Carlson, on the road, is it, I see both 30 and 36 foot mentioned. I'm not quite sure which one it is.
It's 36. If there was, depending on where you saw that, again, we had a lot of discussions with staff, and just as it was last week that we kind of landed on this, that staff seemed to be okay with the 36 face of curb to face of curb.
I guess it says a 30-foot road width is more than adequate. Maybe you're just mentioning that. In
That
the-
might have been a carryover from, we were trying to do a 30-foot road. Obviously, that was not acceptable, so.
Mr. Kubis was working on changing our design standards that possibly look at a 36 20-foot curb-to-curb road, we just hadn't got through to changing that in residential neighborhoods. I mean, what it does for the city is it's less maintenance and a little cheaper for us to maintain down the road. So that is something that we were open to looking at, I think. But
And the 36-foot road, there'd still be no parking on one side?
I've never heard of that before. Is that something that staff wanted, or?
It isn't necessarily something staff wanted, it's just that I think what we've shared with the applicant, and given the nature of this road, I've personally lived on a 40-foot wide road that had pontoons and trailers and whatever, and it was neck down to a one-lane road. I think the intent for this particular type of development, I don't want to speak for them, but they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, the intent is that you don't promote that, and so it doesn't choke it down, but then also emergency services has similar concerns with those types of roads that we have that are 40 feet now, and everybody parks their recreational vehicles out there all year. And so then it becomes an enforcement item for the city.
Typically parking is 8 feet on each side. But I would leave a 20-foot driving lane still, which is plenty wide. So.
President Frederick, part of the discussion with this was the proposed layout is to have the road slope in one direction, and so our drainage all ends up on one side, the sidewalks on one side, and so the fire hydrants are on one side. The intent was to keep parking off of that to help with the larger city and emergency response vehicles to be able to traverse this route. So with the turn CAD program that they can show the larger vehicles and how those wheel lines track, that seemed to work best when there was parking only on one side. And that was part of our discussions that we had with them, is to try to mitigate getting those larger vehicles around.
So who's the enforcement agency on parking then? So if there's a complaint, then we send the police out there, that's our problem, or after we approve this?
Yes, would be my initial response. Hopefully they police themselves to some extent, but I think we all understand that that doesn't always work well within our community, referring back to what Mr. Hadley had stated about pontoons and campers that we have throughout town. We're just trying to come up with some solution to, I guess, two different ends of what we think that work between the proposed project and how engineering sees this functioning. And for us, we didn't feel that with the slope and the way the utilities lay out, that it would function well with parking on both sides.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I hate to keep going back to Sundance Coves, but drive out there, it's a nightmare. It's one side parking only, and you cannot, when people do park, you can't even, there's no way two cars can come and go. I mean, it's just one way, all the way.
Those are what, 30-foot streets?
I believe those are 30 feet.
I think so.
In our discussions, I looked
Yeah.
into that, so that was.
I
Those
remember
are 6 feet
arguing that
narrower.
point
Yeah.
when I was a city commissioner about Sundance Coves.
Mhm.
Those small lots, 7,000 square feet, nightmare, And the whole thing out there is a nightmare.
Yeah, and this is clearly different. It's larger lots, so it's more spread out. And then, yeah, with a 36-foot, we're open to looking at parking on both sides, or if there's areas around the corners that you could limit it. We're very much open to looking at that further. If engineering wants to look at that further as well. I guess just where it started at, as we were trying to avoid the 40-foot road, and so whatever needed to happen to kind of.
The HOA or the residents aren't going to police the parking. If there's a parking issue, they're going to call the police. So we're going to have to enforce it. So.
Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Marshak, is there a regional pond plan for this area, retention pond?
I believe the southeast corner of that loop is set aside for that. However, we haven't moved forward in the design far enough to look at stormwater and how that completely functions. I know in the preliminary discussions, there's some issues with the proposed size of the pipe and the connection in 15th and 30th. So it's still something that we need to dig into and make sure that it would work. But there is property set aside for a pond.
And who's, from what I read in here, a proposed HOA?
Yes, yep, there'd be a HOA. We, again, history of it, we started out, we were wanting to do a private drive, and then the HOA would manage the road as well, but that just wasn't feasible as we got further into it. But we still want to do a HOA with some of the covenants and city standards.
Just to clarify, not for public, not to be involved in any kind of public maintenance. They would be private issues for the
Right,
HOAs.
yes.
It would be
Yep.
private ownership.
I'm looking at the maintenance of that pond.
Yeah.
Yep.
We have issues now with
HOA.
developments, HOAs, and ponds.
Sure.
And it keeps coming back to the city.
Painted
And we have to
Canyon,
deal with the
Sundance
issue.
Coves, HOAs do not work.
And to the chairman's point about the double sidewalks, we just went through a whole issue of mandating sidewalks on both sides of the road for residents in this city. Now, to exempt this, I think would be ludicrous.
Okay, commissioners, do you have any more questions for the applicants?
I guess if I could just make one more comment, Jason, just to go back, I do understand I'm not very versed in the master plan that it was laid out in 13 as far as for this area. I guess some of the conversations that came up with the developer early on, I guess I would kind of share with you what I shared with them is talking about maybe like a State Edition area, State Avenue. You know, we got office buildings, you know, go back, I said Able and Stevenson Funeral Home. You know, that stuff that's commercial there isn't necessarily spelled out in zoning today. You know, we talk about, yeah, we don't want a situation with a hotel or something out of someone's backyard. But obviously over the years, the city had plans on all that stuff to allow commercial on a smaller use, on a smaller lot that can be adjacent to residential that doesn't cause issues. Obviously, we have that in a lot of areas, you know, and I just specified over on the west end of town, but, you know, that was a visual that I gave them as we were talking about how some of this can possibly happen with not affecting, you know, necessarily that. Obviously, as we grow, and I see your point, Jason, big box stores, but we obviously have other areas too that are in here to the south of the interstate. I mean, there's other areas that they're trying to take advantage of a setting that we don't have here. You know, we don't have trees. I reached out to just a few different builders and a few different people I know that are looking to build and just talk to them about, you know, what are the things they want. And part of it was privacy, private neighborhood type feel. Now, this isn't anything too extreme of that, but it would have a feel of a private, you know. Now, this neighborhood does not have as many lots as the Sundance Coves and will not be added on to. So having a little narrower street and knowing how many houses are going to be in this loop is a different factor to look at least. Consider that these aren't collector streets. These aren't streets that feed into a neighborhood that's going to be added on in 5 years. It's just this right here. And I know there's commercial that leads into it, but I don't think we're talking about commercial as far as hotels and stuff like that. You got to remember, you guys have been responsible in the past with those limited commercial, community commercial zones. They're tough to fit certain businesses in. I've been here many times where somebody wants to put something in on an LC zone and it just affects homeowners too much. And we've shot it down as a community. That would be the same thing here. If there was something that would negatively affect anything around there, you know, you look south of 15th, we have Cornerstone Bank, we have an eye clinic, one level buildings. Those are the kind of the development that we might see in an area outlining from some of those big box stores. So I guess that was just my 2 cents about, what I compared it to when they came to me about it. The other thing is being private, when it was all the way to 30th, it kind of solved that problem, taking the houses all the way and having just a little bit bigger neighborhood. But then we had houses up against 30th. But we'd also then didn't have an exit either to worry about, so.
Yeah, and that's to me is the difference between State Avenue and this road. I mean, this is the growth area of Dickinson, west and north. I mean, 30th Avenue is 1,000 feet from the last exit into Dickinson. I mean, this is where commercial's gonna go. People want to be by the interstate. I mean, yeah, I mean, you could put some CC in here, I suppose, and keep it real limited to office buildings or something, but is that what's in the best use of this property and in the best interest of the city? In my opinion, I don't think so, but there's eight other people here, so that's my opinion on it.
Mr. Chairman, could I clarify, Mr. Kuntz, would you guys and Mr. Carlson consider those lots along 30th? I mean, if they want to consider this and move it forward, would you consider deed restricting those uses to something specifically that would be compatible given the proximity there? The items along 15th, I personally don't have as much of a concern with just because of the buffer that you have built in, and I think your HOA is going to preserve that and ensure that is either there or replaced. So maybe that's just an idea. Is that
Yeah, I mean, I think it's to
might
our
work?
advantage to have something that's compatible. So I think we'd be open to looking at something. So we don't want a hotel there. So we're open to suggestions there. Maybe just one other piece I want to mention on the sidewalk. If that's a deal breaker, we're happy to add that second sidewalk. I guess my request is that we could do that second one right up to the curb. So we'd have one with a boulevard in between, and then one right up next to the curb. That limits our right of way. It keeps our right of way at that 52 feet. So if that would be
So
a little sweeter.
are we requiring them to put the sidewalks in right away prior to construction of the houses?
No.
So then wouldn't that be just on the landowner like it isn't everywhere else in whoever's building the house everywhere else in the city?
Right. That's correct, but their plan would reflect it. So then when someone came in to build a home, they would know that they were going to build that. And I believe the item with the sidewalk adjacent to curb, which isn't our norm, it isn't our norm, was discussed through staff, and given the fact of the plan and the way it was laid out, that staff supported that. Obviously, it comes back down to, yes, we have our typical standards now that we typically follow. Our comeback to the initial not having a sidewalk there and just a curb was to put the sidewalk adjacent to the curb to provide that walking area. So yes, it wouldn't meet our strict standards, but once again, this is a PUD they're designing and proposing within this bubble, trying to come up with a solution that works. And so I believe staff supported that as best staff could support it, much more so than not having one there.
In my opinion, I think sidewalks should all be up to the curb. Most people don't, it's hard to take care of a boulevard if you,
It's for snow storage.
Snow removal makes a big difference.
That's why, so.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, if I can share my 2 cents here, there's a few things I really like about this. I like the use of trees. You guys did a good job implementing that, and I think it creates some barriers, some natural barriers. The lot sizes are definitely decent and adequate. We already have some multifamily apartments and stuff to the south of there. One of the big things right now, and with COVID and in the last few years, the dynamics of the way we do business are changing, and this whole coronavirus, COVID, has really increased the pace that things are changing, the way we shop and do business. Big box stores might not necessarily be what's looking to come anywhere in a lot of cases. The location here isn't perfect, but I do like the way it's put together. We already have a lot of commercial to handle any big, down to the south and south of the interstate. I think we're really looking at that too. There's so much for commercial already. I do think sidewalks on both sides are something if we do approve this, it would be mandatory. The road widths are a little concern at the, 36 feet might work, but also with sidewalks. I guess that's about it. That's just my input on it right now.
Mr. Carr, thank you. Anyone else? Comments or questions for the applicant before we open the public hearing? Okay, thank you
I
guys.
forgot to mention, just if you want, I've got some photocopies of the slides here. I'll just leave them here if anybody wants to grab them, or
Oh,
you want them, Walter, here?
yeah, well, I'll pass it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
At this time, this is a public hearing to consider the future land use map amendment. So if anybody in the public would like to come forward and make any comments regarding this proposal, this is the time to come forward and state your name. Anyone in the public? Come forward.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I didn't catch because I was passing stuff, but did you announce this as the hearing on the flume?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, this is the public hearing on just the flume only. Again, anyone in the public, I guess, do we have to check if anybody calls in, or?
I don't know if are we still tied to doing that, Ms. Linko?
Are we broadcasting live?
Mr. Hadley, was it noticed that way? Do you recall?
I don't believe so. No.
Okay, well, all right, we'll let it
Oh,
go then.
hold on. It's on our agenda, so yes.
Okay, I've never used this before, so bear with me.
The conference is currently empty. You will hear silence or music on hold when connected.
Anyone in the public or watching this live can call into 456-7006 if they have any comments regarding this flume map amendment. Commissioners, our first item would be action on the future land use map amendment. Looking for a motion to approve or deny.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the proposed future land use amendment from commercial to residential as depicted in Attachment A, as meeting all the requirements of Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare. And the following additional requirements, I'm not sure, I think we need the sidewalks on both sides is definitely one of them.
Just to clarify, Commissioner, on this, it's just
Oh,
the changing of the zone. When you get to the limit with PUD, then that would be in Plat. That would be
Correction.
appropriate. Thank you.
With no additional requirements.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Mr. Cordnoy. Commissioners, any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I hear your argument, and I don't disagree with it. I'm trying to think. I think I agree with Mr. Karski and Ms. Dukart that there's positives and negatives on both sides. in my opinion, I think I tend to agree with Mr. Karski. There's a lot of acreage out there. There's other opportunities. I know if you're looking out 50 years, which we need to do, you're probably going to have this in the middle of or at least butted up against the commercial zone. But I think overall, I think I can support this as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moyer. All right, anybody else with any comments? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to item 2 on the agenda then. To consider a PUD. This is to consider a request for a planned unit development and portion of lots 1 through 7, Block 5, Pinecrest, First Edition. I don't know, Mr. Hadley, you want to do
The
we?
only thing I'd add, Mr. Chairman, thank you, is that on the PUD, if this would be the place where if you wanted to create a buffer and have them address that, I would add a condition of approval between those lots on the east side.
Okay.
And then my question on that is, they wouldn't do, it would be our responsibility to do limited on the commercial part, or are we just talking about the residential now?
No, what I'm saying, because their PUD encompasses both where the commercial is and the residential is, so they can put it off, if you will, until the commercial is actually developed. But we can craft what kind of a screen you would like to have in there. Similar to what I said with Lions, where we said it was a 6.5-foot vinyl fence put up by the developer that as those homes are built, you know, whether we do it now or whether we do it when it's triggered when commercial is built there. Obviously, I think it might be cleaner to do it when the homes are built, because as we know, we don't know when the commercial may be built, and there might be an amendment to the PUD down the road at some point in time. So I would almost suggest that some sort of a buffer, if that's what you want to do, would be included with the PUD for that whole eastern portion of those back lots.
I definitely want a buffer in there on that east.
I mean, it just, to me, it's going to depend on the use.
I know.
What's a 6.5-foot, a 6-foot vinyl fence going to do?
No.
If there's a 3-story building there,
Well, we have to do the limited use too. I think trees could be planted right away.
You could plant, you could authorize or require them to plant a 3-row similar to the one that's there. You could also require a fence, because obviously those trees aren't going to grow quick enough.
Kyle, help me out here. You're going to be helping me sell these.
Are those trees movable?
I'm sure some of them are. I don't know if all of them are, but yeah, I don't know if you were going to repurpose. Fine, it might be.
Where, I guess, yeah, where the road is going through, we'll have to either cut those down or closer. Obviously, where the road is going to be going, we're going to have to cut those down, or we could look at the potential to move them. My thought on the commercial, just depending on what the actual use is, might determine the best buffer. Mr. Commissioner, you kind of alluded to that. So my preference would be that would be tied into that use rather than from day one, because we don't know what's going to go there yet.
And just to clarify that, I think that might be a workable solution, but I think that probably comes hand in hand with deed restricting those lots to uses that you can buffer. Then that would take out the hotels and some of the things that we've obviously learned are not good neighbors to the backyards of homes. So I think, you know, by the time we come back for a development agreement, if this moves forward, you know, that should be something that would be included in that as well, I would think. If you're going to delay that, we still have it as a condition of approval, appropriate buffer for those uses, but then have the dialogue on what those uses are gonna entail. And that would be, obviously, you'd be being more restrictive than our zoning. So you would have to propose
Sure.
that.
Mr. Carlson, you're okay with that? I mean, that's gonna limit what you can sell those commercial lots for in the future.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to maybe see the language of what that deed restriction,
I mean, you're
be.
talking probably no gas stations, no fast food places, no hotels.
on the east side there, you're saying, or
Right.
not on the south side?
I think,
Yeah.
my opinion
Yeah.
is I think your HOA is gonna preserve
Yeah.
that buffer.
Yeah.
And if they do, the south side isn't as much of an issue.
Right.
As the east side, which doesn't have any buffer. So
Right.
the deed restriction in my mind would just be on the east side of those 4 lots. That would be my suggestion. And the deed restriction, it would be pretty easy to look at the allowed uses, and what we're proposing and just scratch off. I welcome you to do.
Would that be for the next round?
Yeah.
For that? And I guess we can massage that, just what that deed restriction is. But in concept, we don't have a problem with some kind of a restriction on those east lots. I'll talk to the owner here in the meantime, but I don't see that being an issue, so.
It's gonna affect your value of those east lots. And so that's something you're definitely gonna wanna consider.
Right. And with the restricted access too, it's a tricky, those are some tricky lots anyway. So we're a little bit limited in the first place for much commercial there anyway.
Okay. All right. Any further comments on the PUD? If not, we'll open this up.
Just one comment on that, and this might be way out of there, Mr. Hadley, is there the possibility of making that a one-way with parking on both sides if it's a 36? It's a pretty short, little area, is that?
Is there a possibility, Commissioner? Yes, I think it's a possibility. I don't know, we haven't talked with emergency services on it or engineering. I'd want to hear their comment on it. I don't
Absolutely.
personally have a problem with it, but I don't know if it works as well, but it might.
My hunch is we'd want to keep it two-way for the loop there. I guess we're open to exploring other options of the parking issue. If there's another way to rethink the parking, I'm happy to work with Loretta and other staff to see if there's another solution in there that everybody would be happy with.
I mean, it's a pretty small area.
Yeah.
It really is, to get out of there, roughly, if you're on that corner house down on the southeast, probably take, 30 seconds to get around that subdivision, maybe a minute at the most. I don't know how Mr. Selly feels on this, if emergency services or anybody else, I'd be curious to hear. I mean, that way it gives you parking on both sides, and I wouldn't be opposed to parking on both sides if it's a one-way. Otherwise, we know that on a 36-foot road or whatever, anything more narrow than normal can be an issue with driving if people park on, like you said, a pontoon or camper or something, so.
Mr. Stelly would like to speak.
Mr. Selly,
I guess as from the fire department standpoint, whether it's a one-way or two-way, doesn't matter to us. Access to it is our issue. I would see, having parking on both sides is going to make it very tight on a 36-foot wide street. We've seen it, whether it's a dually pickup or a boat or a camper, they all park just a foot off the curb and try to get things out in the street a little farther, and it gets really tight. This has got tight radiuses. I know it's a limited community, but they also limited the lot size, so they didn't have to have 2 access points. So this is a large number of houses that's just under the minimum number, or the maximum number, I should say, for 2 access points to a development of this size. It would be tight with parking on both sides on a 36. I know it would meet by measurement, but
yeah, what's required for a fire truck? What do you guys usually?
20 feet.
20.
And you get 2 parking on both sides, and if they're not right inside that 8-foot line, it's too tight already.
I can see on the radiuses where it could be an issue.
Yeah.
For sure.
But even on the straight sections, if somebody parks on both sides and one vehicle's too far out, we can't, and being one access point, our fire trucks need to come in from both directions and they need to be able to pass each other. So if we have one parked there, say fighting a fire, we have to have one that can get past to get to the other side, and it could really jam us up.
So is that why we're always at the 40 feet?
Typically, yep.
So,
And the kind of, as our discussions that we had was limiting parking on one side would keep us that access that we feel would be acceptable. I mean, yeah, on paper, 20 feet would work with parking on both sides, but it's on paper and what happens in our life, it doesn't always work. I know I've talked with the Fargo Fire Marshal on this very situation. With these narrow streets, they've been fighting them, haven't been winning, and they have problems with them.
In your opinion, somebody else say something? Oh. In your opinion, is limiting parking to one side a better option than the one-way?
In our opinion, yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Sully. Commissioners?
all we've done so far is rezoned it.
Well, we've just changed the flume. We haven't done anything yet.
Okay.
We haven't done anything yet. If we approve the PUD, that'll approve the zoning.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll open the public hearing on the PUD. If anyone in the public has comments or concerns regarding this PUD, please come forward and state your name. And I will call in here too.
The conference is currently empty. You will hear silence or music on hold when connected.
If anyone in the public or online has any comments or concerns regarding this PUD, this is the time to come forward. The number is 456-7006. Anyone in the public?
Hello. My name is Doug Decker. I reside at 1603 30th Avenue West. I just want the board to be aware that I do have an agreement with the developer. I know he hasn't seen it yet, but because I have an easement on the south side of my trees. So I hope you guys just take that into account. That's about all I have.
Can you just elaborate on what kind of agreement you have, Mr. Decker?
Well, there was several things, because they're supposed to put a fence up around my property. And then also, one of the other ones was a gate. Because if they were going to run a street past where I access my property, they had agreed on putting a gate there.
So that would be
on the north side of my property.
North side of your
Yep.
property, okay. And I'm guessing that hasn't been done?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. One more time, anyone else in the public that would like to make a comment, please step forward. Or online, you can call in 456-7006. All right, hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Commissioners, questions, concerns? Maybe the applicant would like to address the agreement, if they, Mr. Decker?
Mr. Decker just handed me the agreement here before the meeting, so I haven't had a chance to read through it. I wasn't involved in 2013 when the discussion was made for the commercial use there, so I'm not sure. Without reading through it, I'm not sure how much of it still applies to this one. We'll have to look at this further, though.
Okay.
Just, Mr. Chairman, just skimming it real quick from my standpoint, it looked like if the northern portion of this commercial property was being accessed from Pinecrest Parkway, which is the right-of-way that I mentioned before. That is Mr. Decker's main access to his driveway and his home. I think it pertained to a lot of development on this. Right now, unless that is planned for this, I don't see that they're coming into being required. And once again, that PUD, he's got a private agreement, but that PUD approval, which tied this to it, is no longer there. So they do have a private agreement, but I don't see and I don't think that they're proposing any access off of that right now. But they probably should be aware of it, because as they work through this and as they want to develop that commercial property, then that might be something that would need to be addressed then. Just in skimming it, just.
What about the fence along?
I just got it too.
What about the fence along the tree rows? Would that be on that fence line right there, or is that tree row right there?
The fence line on the north side.
It's the north side, or is it on the south side?
The north side of these proposed lots. I believe, Mr. Decker, maybe clarify it. Was it on the, is it on your side of the tree row, or? Okay, perimeter, okay. Which would be on, I believe, Brian, the south side of the trees. I believe. Yeah, from what I see, I don't have anything exact in front of me, but it appears as though most of that tree row is probably sitting a lot on your property. And so it would be probably sufficient to say that the fence would go on the south side of that tree row. We definitely don't want to put it through the middle of them. So I think that was the intent of that. So that could be a condition of the PUD if you'd like to follow through with this.
So was the easement, Mr. Decker, that you're talking about, was that platted in the PUD, or is that recorded?
I think on the last page, I'm not sure what it,
The original PUD, was that platted in there, and was that a requirement?
because it was their company or the prior company that had designed that.
I mean, it might,
8th day of August, it was recorded, 8th day of August, 2013.
so that agreement's recorded with the recorder's office?
Ms. Wenko, I guess I'd ask for your direction on.
Mr. Hadley, I have not seen the easement, so I guess if you can provide it to me, I'll be quickly take a look at it. But obviously, if it has been recorded, it is something that would have to be taken into consideration as you move forward with the development of this project, unless the easement is vacated in some capacity as the whole development moves forward.
I'm reading it. I just got it myself.
While she's reading that, and unless she's ready yet, I guess there's some things before we make a motion or anything that we really need to get hashed out, and that's the parking on both sides of the road, possibility of a one-way, sidewalks on both sides, and the barrier on the east side between, the commercial zoned area.
And defense to the north?
That would be.
If we need that.
Sure.
What's your guys' opinions? Let's hear them.
Our standard streets are 40-foot wide now, right?
That's what I heard, yes.
Yeah.
And by doing a PUD, they can vary from that. I mean, And like I said, Mr. Kubis was entertaining the idea of changing our standard residential street width to 36. Just because of future maintenance and cost to the city, it saves them a little bit of money. So it hasn't been approved, but it's something that was in conversation prior to this, so.
Mr. Chairman, personally, I don't have a problem with the 36-foot street width. The double sidewalk, I guess I wouldn't stray from that, and I would require sidewalks on both sides. I'm okay with the second side butting up to the street. Parking on one side of the street, I guess for the purposes stated, I'm in favor of that. I think I would prefer to stay away from the one-way, if we could. I prefer to go both ways there. But besides that, I guess the rest of the conditions seem appropriate and reasonable.
Thank you, Mr. Bollinger. Anyone else?
I would agree with Mr. Bullinger on that. The only thing is, I kind of do like the one-way with parking on both sides. I think just to save our police department enforcement issues and things like that of the parking, we don't want, and neighbors are bickering across, you're parking across the street in my spot, that can be a big issue. It's such a small area for a one-way, I think it fits there, but I'm open if the developer says no on that. I'm willing to look at both ways.
Just one comment that we did talk about that as a group is, the city has addressed that over the years with some of the narrower lots. When they restricted the curb cuts on some of the stuff to being a certain width because of parking. If you have a 75-foot, 80-foot lot and you had a 34 garage, and then you had, when the sidewalk was against the curb, and then you do the ADA, so now you're 36 plus 5 to 7 feet on each side, you really only had one parking spot. Here we do have a little bit wider lot though. We're talking, the smallest ones probably being 95, 98 wide. Those ones up on the top are 115. So even if it is on one side, we do have a little bit more parking than our average street. That's an 80-foot wide lot.
Except most garages are triples.
Yeah.
Remember that.
Well, that's part of it, but that would still be the curb cut restriction is still there as far as city. So the builders have to work that out. If they do have a wide garage, they can't have that wide approach, which helps with the parking.
Where we run into issues with one-sided parking is, like Mr. Karski said, let's say one of these neighbors has 2 teenage kids that both drive, and they have to park their car on the street. Now you're parking in the neighbor's front yard every night, and it causes an issue. Or you pull your boat in there but you can't park on your side of the street, but you pull your boat in there for a night, and now you're parking in front of their house. That causes an issue. So I see it on 40-foot streets, so I can't imagine it's going to be better when we only have parking on one side.
Just with it being larger lots, I think that'll help alleviate it to not only more room on the street, but also more room to park the vehicle on their driveway as well. And as far as one-way, I think we prefer to stay away from the one-way. It's a little, it'd be kind of a unique thing where, especially if you're the first house, but then you have to go all the way around. I don't know if that'd be real attractive to potential buyers. So we'd prefer to stay with a two-way.
Well, if you had the option between a one-way and parking on both sides, what would you take?
I think we'd I think we'd stick with the two-way.
And only parking on one side?
If need be, yep.
Okay.
Would you be able to do the 40-foot wide?
I guess we're really hoping to get less than the 40-foot. Again, the lots to the north, we're at 127 feet now. The depth is getting narrower than we had wanted, so we really want to keep that right away down to the 52.
That is a commercial road going in there also, so that would help leaving that at 40 feet. But can you knock the road down from 40 to 36?
You're saying if the entrance road was 40 feet and the way we were treating the entrance road was that there wouldn't be parking on that road because because there'd be commercial uses too. Is that right, Laura? Is that where we talked? We wouldn't do any parking on that.
That's correct. That's
Yeah.
what we discussed,
Yeah.
would be there was no parking on that entrance road.
For,
Thus, it would feel wider, even though the dimensions are the same.
all right. Okay,
My opinion is that parking on one side of the street doesn't work. You get problems with neighbors, it's going to be an issue.
Okay, maybe another, would it, before the next time we come here, if we looked at another possibility with, I guess, fire maybe wasn't crazy about this idea, but just if we limited on the corners, but looked at a possibility, if there was a workable solution to allow parking in the middle, parking on both sides in the middle, but not on the radius areas. I don't know if that's going to work or not, but I guess we could take another look at it and propose something.
so, how deep are these lots?
The ones on the north are 127 feet, but then there's on the inner one, there's the tree row, so you lose some for the trees themselves too. So
So how deep are the inside lots?
the northern half of the inside lots is 127. The southern half is a little bit more than that, maybe like 130 or something.
Then how big are the outside lots, deep, roughly?
On the north outer ones, it's 127. On the south, it's a little bit more. Just the way that the trees landed, it's because the trees are on Mr. Decker's property to the north. Versus the way it laid out, our lot line goes to the south of the trees on the south. So the south lots are a little bit deeper than the north lots.
So we're doing a what, 66-foot right away then?
52 foot.
I'm just trying to wrap my arms around how 127 down to 125 really makes that much difference. I mean, you're going to lose 2 feet per lot, right? To make a 40-foot street?
Yeah, that's.
Can
Right.
we
Am I-
have Leonard Schwinn, I have a couple questions.
Sure, just a second. Go ahead, Mr. Hadley.
Ouch.
That was me or not?
Whatever that was.
Don't think
Okay,
that
let's
bad.
try that again.
Remember, it's on the inside, it's sidewalk, 5-foot sidewalk, 5-foot planter strip, curb, 36-foot curb to curb road. 5-foot sidewalk is what you're proposing and what staff was working with. Not what they were proposing, but that would add an additional 5 feet there. And then there's a 5-foot portion of the right-of-way that's green space / area to install utilities. And I think that's where we've come with it, just to kind of paint that picture for you, is where we are. Yeah, that shows, I think it shows the dimensions there, it does. With that, I think there was some challenges for parking even in portions of the mid portions of the roadway, only because of the turning radius. If you go back to the other slide that shows the turning radius on there for emergency services, it does tighten up, as you can see, when you come out of the corners. I don't know if that works or not. I'll leave that to engineering and the emergency service people. If they can have some parking on those areas, then those two departments should basically weigh in heavily and tell you whether or not they should.
I mean,
On the corners, most definitely not.
yeah.
Just looking at it here again, an area where potentially it could work is on the east and west streets there on the inside, where there's not driveways there's not turning. To me, that could be a strong candidate to do that. I suppose even if we widened the road just on those ends, you know, perhaps the ends could be 40 feet. I'm just thinking out loud here, but just the north, yeah, the streets that go north and south on the east and west sides. So if this dimension was 40, you could potentially add the parking there and there. That might be a solution.
I mean, 36-foot streets work good when you're talking maybe a meandering road or a grid-type subdivision, but when you put these tight radiuses in there, it really makes it tough to do. And they're close. The radiuses are close too, so you don't have a lot of stretching between them. But
I want to hear from two people.
Okay.
Number one, the code enforcement person is here regarding HOAs, because I want that taken out.
okay,
So,
anything more from Mr. Carlson first?
Yes, one thing. The price of these homes, what's our price range on?
We haven't landed there exactly. Kyle can speak on what we're initially.
Size?
Well, you know, our anticipation, you know, we've ran some conceptual numbers for the lot costs. We're probably going to be on the upper end of our market based on size alone. So we're anticipating of having sizes of probably a higher priced home in here.
So then they have a tendency to have the boats and the campers and all the other
And
stuff
that's
too.
where, going back to the beginning and talking about that, I shared with them, you know, the want for lots wider than 80, 85, and that's where that conversation came in. To get them up, you know, those ones, like I said, some of those are 115 to allow that. So that's kind of where the conversation is. You know, like I said, to go back, we're talking about road width, but we also, you know, trying to get a lot that somebody wants to do a higher end house. We were really concerned about the depth too. You know, the last thing we want to do is have a nice big house and a deck and boom, you're right at the trees. You know, so that we're trying to take advantage of the trees, but try to find that happy medium to make it all work for that potential homeowner.
okay. Leonard,
Mr. Schwint, thanks, Mr. Kuntz.
I want your opinion now. Let's do.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I'll repeat with what Mr. Decker said. HOAs for the city of Dickinson are problematic. It's an enforcement issue. Generally, what I don't like to do is make conditions on a building permit. Every one of these becomes a condition on a building permit, a fence, tree rows. We had, I believe it was Lion subdivision in the northeast portion of Dickinson. As a permit was issued, they added the fence. The neighbors at that time were constant. It was a call every day. When's the fence going in? I mean, we make those conditions on a building permit. If this board is going to set some standards, I would like to see that those standards are in place at this time. How to keep those standards in place will be another enforcement issue, but I'm more willing to deal with that than to as we go. It's a lot easier to issue those permits and work through that process when the condition this board puts on properties is in place at the forefront.
Any questions for Mr. Schwint?
And I guess that would include tree rows. By the time that commercial does get developed, the trees will be grown. It won't be an issue.
Okay. Thank you.
So-
Oh, go ahead, Shirley.
So put the tree rows in on the east side right away?
That would be, I guess, my recommendation.
Well, that's what I want to see too. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, the HOAs, once again, we clarified they weren't going to do any public improvements. We as a board don't really care if they have an HOA that restricts housing color. If they have tree rows in the back of their lot that they're going to be responsible to replace, I don't know that we want to get in the middle of that. So HOAs do serve a purpose. We haven't had good luck with HOAs with public utilities and infrastructure. So I think we need to separate that, because you can't tell someone they can't have an HOA. because they can have an HOA. It just, when it relates to public infrastructure, things that affect us as a city, then most definitely, yes, we can. But I don't know that we can. I'll look to Ms. Winkle, but I don't think we can tell people they can't have a HOA to restrict private property issues to preserve the integrity of their development that they're trying to do. That's one. Number two, Mr. Schwint's comment on the building permit stuff, I totally agree. That's why I've come from the land of putting in the improvements prior to people building homes. But we can capture all of the things that we are going to do as far as conditions of improvements in the development agreement, and that can be there can be a surety in place for that, and there can be a time and date when that would be constructed. So that would take it completely out of the building permit process, which I think we should do anyway. But it still gets us to the same point.
Okay, on the HOA, that's fine. I mean, I like the fact that they have to have brick or block or whatever they want to have. But that retention pond, that's always the issue. I don't think we have to word it different that
So
they're, you know.
Yeah, so is the retention pond going to be ours then? Is that the?
I believe so. I think that's where we're going with these now. I'll let Ms. Marshak address that, but I think that's where we're heading because of the issues and failures that we've had in the past. All of those in Sundance Cove, we'll just keep throwing that one to the fire, I guess. From the discussion standpoint, there's pond out there, and it's basically ours. And so I totally agree, but that is a public infrastructure issue that should have probably been separated out if that was the case. And so lesson learned, whether we do it, I think we collect stormwater fees at this point, and that, I don't know, Mr. Marshak, maybe you can take it from there. Is that will be used to maintain or not? Or?
I think in the past, we've always tried to put these with HOAs, and I think you're all aware of that. It's a necessary item to mitigate our stormwater. And for the most part, in the end, we end up arguing with whoever still owns the property to get them taken care of. We get them back, and we, for the most part, end up taking care of them ourselves to make sure they function properly. I think staff knows that. I think we have work to do moving forward on a better process or better requirements. There's lots of options out there with that. We haven't dug into the stormwater on this item very deep yet. There is catch basins proposed in some of the work that I've seen thus far, and you know, it might be that we're able to pipe that stormwater away into our existing system that we have in 30th and 15th, but I don't know that answer for definitely at this point. So I guess my thought is that we will end up maintaining this at some point. Maybe that's not the intent. You know, it can be written in their HOA. If they keep it, we could keep after them to make sure they're maintaining it. But in the end, it's still something that we review and make sure that it's functioning.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Marchand. Ms. Wanko, do you have a legal opinion for us?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, just in regard to some of the follow-up conversation here, it is possible, I think, I think what I've seen, at least in my experience practicing, is when these developments are created, they're either declarations or covenants that are recorded against the property, and then at some point there's an HOA that attempts to be created, or it's not created because it's not done simultaneously. So there could be additional requirements and restrictions that are done within a potential declaration, so that anyone who purchases this property understands these are the requirements of what will be required for a home built in this area. With regard to the agreement, I did have a chance to review it. It doesn't appear that it has been recorded. I've checked Endrin to see if there was a recorded document of record. I don't see that. However, it is still a contractual agreement between Pinecrest and Mr. Decker and Mr. Frenzel. A couple requirements. It was signed back in 2013. With regard to the access and gate issue, there is a condition that says prior to the elimination of direct access from the Decker property to 30th Avenue, Pinecrest would install and construct new access. I am assuming that elimination has not occurred yet, so obviously that hasn't happened yet. And then also too, there is requirements for installation of a 6-foot vinyl fence, the installation of existing trees being preserved. So there are requirements that Pinecrest is legally obligated to Mr. Decker and to Mr. Frenzel to complete. So I think if the commission moves forward and approves this, then these requirements would also have to be worked into the requirements that would be part of that PUD moving forward. So I don't have an issue based on the conversation that we've had. It seems to me that these requirements make sense for the overall development with the wanting that blockage essentially, but this agreement does run with the land, so they are bound by its terms and its requirements and its obligations.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
there's quite a few things we're discussing here, and we spent a lot of time on this right now, and I don't know if anybody's in agreement on all these. Would I be out of line to say we table this until next meeting, have them come back with something that addresses more of these issues, and so we're not making so many addendums to our motion, or
That's, that'd be up to the board on how they want to move. I mean, a motion to table would be something that you could make if that's what you would like to see. And then we could give them a list of things we want to see, bring back to the
address
next
and come
meeting.
back. There's just there's a lot of things here we're discussing. Everything from the east side fence or trees or whatever's over there, sidewalks, roads. We got a lot of things we need to discuss that can be improved upon and presented again. Go ahead, Mr.
I guess it's a wish of the owner to keep moving forward. Our timeline, we were hoping to kind of keep it going here and be on the next agenda item for the second round. We feel we could pick up some of these things if there's some conditions to approve now, and then when we come back for the next approval, we'll pick some of those up. I guess my preference would be to not table it. We had hoped to kind of get through this process yet this fall, really start road construction here before winter. So that it really slows down the timeline for us if it's tabled.
Just, Mr. Chairman, if I could, with timeline, that, once again, you can make a choice, whatever you want to do. The applicant, based on where we are today, was told that if they had final plat information to us by Friday or Monday, I don't know which one I told you, but Monday the legal has to go in, that they would be on the next agenda for final plat, which would then coincide with City Commission final approval on the flume and the zone change, or PUD. So, be that as it may, that's what we were working toward. Whether or not we do that or move forward, I just think you should be aware of that.
Commissioners, are you at that point where you're comfortable approving this?
Frederick?
Yes.
From engineering standpoint, I just wanted to share with you that we haven't had a chance to comment on their preliminary plat. So I feel the timeline would be very difficult from a staff standpoint to give them comments on their preliminary plat and be able to turn around, get a final plat, and get those comments resolved in the time frame that Mr. Hadley needs to get the legal out for the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Marchad.
Well, no matter how we look at it, you're not going to get approved until, even if we did pass this today, September, you wouldn't even be
You'll
able
push
to
it back.
start
It'll push
till
it back a
October.
month.
So who knows? The snow could be flying by then too. I don't know.
If you guys approve today, it's not a done deal, so we still have to come back. Either way, I guess our preference would be approve today and work out what we need to work out moving forward before the next approval.
Well,
We
okay.
have a lot of things. I don't know if we all even agree on what we've all discussed. but
Right.
I agree with you,
Mr. Chairman, the biggest issue on the plat, and I agree with Loretta's comment on reviewing the plat. You know, I have a note here that, you know, when we get to the plat that, you know, that I was going to mention that they hadn't had a time to final review the preliminary plat. Whether you're inclined to do it or not, the final plat, when it would come in, the major issues was the roadway and the configuration of it. Obviously, then Ms. Marshak's going to look at stormwater with them and finalize some more details. Before that moves on, obviously, we'd have a crafted development agreement that would have all of the proposed conditions from staff and the applicant as far as timelines. So either way, whether we do it, whether we delay it, or whether we do it the following month, we could still craft it and have conditions, have the public process of it done through PZ, but it just wouldn't go, as we've done with similar other projects, we wouldn't take it to the city commission until it was finalized that way with all the conditions of the development agreement. So there's a way to do that, but you know, it puts a constraint on us. I mean, it does, if anybody, it makes it more difficult on us. And that's, you know, kind of this whole process of what we've been doing and how we've tried to facilitate and work with this project literally. And I know that, you know, Mr. Carlson has probably been frustrated with this from the standpoint of, you know, he had a plan and then we kind of backed him up and changed it based on some of our comments but we have tried to facilitate him getting into this room and get heard and move along as quickly as we possibly could. We literally were that last day, last notice time, and I really don't like doing that. But this time of year, we also try to facilitate that just because people tend to try to do something before winter. But so be that as it may, that's just where we are.
So,
well, we still have the opportunity to deny the final plot anyway. So
You do.
Either way.
You do.
so is there another public hearing?
There is.
So there would be another public hearing.
Yeah, well, obviously, the flume and the PUD, if you do it, then it's public hearings.
I'm saying if we approve these today, would there be another public hearing with if people are concerned about the new conditions we're putting on?
Yes.
And that's my point. If you're willing to do that today and we work through it, if you're comfortable with the overall concept, we need to work through some details. We have some time to do that. We'd appreciate an approval today. So, thank you.
Are we comfortable with what we want to put on for additional conditions for them to address? That's the question.
I don't even know what the additional I mean, I know what the considerations are, but I don't know where we're going with them. Are we, you know, 40-foot, 36-foot parking on both sides? You know, I don't know what to make a motion with on here.
So we either approve it as presented, or we table it, or we modify what we want to see, and so they can come back and address it.
Well, I'm not approving it as we see it.
So
Sorry.
So then we need to craft what we want to see. Or
Mr. Chairman, I took a few notes on what the concerns were on top of the conditions that were proposed of approval. The 36-foot road is where we are with this, just to clarify that. That's what I believe that they're sticking with and proposing. 5-foot sidewalk, planter strip on the inside. We have added a sidewalk based on our discussions. I believe there's a concurrence for that. I believe that they've acknowledged that. So as far as the road, that is the road. The buffer to the north toward Mr. Decker needs to be addressed, and to the east, to the backside of the commercial. That simply, I don't know that we need to design that. I think we can have an adequate buffer. I think the north one is relatively easy, and it's spelled out in that agreement as far as a fence. What we think the other one should be probably should mimic that, I'm assuming. But we could capture that in a development agreement. And we can add it as a condition on this approval.
There's the deed restrictions on the commercial lots.
Deed restrictions on, yes, that was the next one, deed restrictions on the east side commercial lots.
And the buffer, that has to be done ahead of time, not when the commercial lots are sold. I want that put in there
Right.
too.
When they come with I would almost envision our development agreement when they come back to you with a final plat should be more of the form that we take to the city commission when it's in final form. We tend to work with people on that later end, and we still could. I mean, it could get to the city commission and there might be 2 or 3 things that are added. That's great. We can deal with it there, but I almost would encourage the applicant to have a development agreement that really sums this up, timelines, improvements, all of the stuff that we want to see or that you're talking about seeing.
And we can do that in a month. We can have all that ready for our next meeting. That's what you're telling me?
If I have the information, yes, we surely can.
And did you say he has to have it in by Friday, this week, Friday, the changes?
The 24th, the final plat has to be in.
Next
The
week.
information needs to be in. We go through a couple rounds of site plan review of these projects. Ms. Marshak, I'm sure will have Apex working on it and involved with it, whether it fits her timeline. If it doesn't fit her timeline and we can't get an answer and I can't do an adequate review of it, then it can't really move forward. Then my review is going to be, as we've done in the past with other things, to table the item. My suggestion from staff would then be to table the item to move forward. If you don't want to do that, then obviously the option is to act upon it, give them this list of things that they need to come back and do, and meet our normal timeline. I'm just saying, we have tried to really help facilitate not just this project, but a number of them in the last number of months have been a little bit challenging from the standpoint of COVID and meetings and changing of advertising dates and all of that. We've had some major challenges. We're just trying to help on our end of it. So if you're so inclined, then those are the things that I had noted. I don't know if there's any other concerns or comments. If there is, we can definitely add them to that PUD.
I think the one area that I didn't hear was parking, either on one side of the street or on both sides, and then the consideration for a one-way versus a two-way traffic. After hearing the arguments and some considerations, I think parking on both sides is probably the direction I would lean, and it sounds like it's possible to still consider two-way traffic, but if that means one-way traffic, then I guess I would support that as well.
What are your wishes, commissioners?
I'm pretty much on the same page right now. Mr. Hadley seemed to have pretty good notes on that with the addition of Mr. Bullinger. Sounds okay.
Okay.
Brad and Dean?
Everyone else? Then I'd entertain a motion.
Are we doing a motion right now? Will that be for the future land use amendment, or did we?
We approved the future land use
what I
amendment.
thought.
This would be for the approve the PUD.
From ag to PUD, AG. And we do not need those conditions on there on that, do we?
Yeah, we would on that. On the PUD, we would.
I thought that would be for motion 3.
Yeah.
But for motion 2.
No, because the PUD would have all all the
You
requirements.
can put conditions on both of them, but I'd suggest on the buffer and the things that are the big issues that you're talking about and the roadway, you can definitely put that in the PUD. Because this particular PUD had 25 conditions the first time it was approved.
Very well. I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the rezoning application Pinecrest Second Edition / PUD as depicted in Attachment A as meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of public health, safety, and welfare, and the following additional requirements as Mr. Hadley had listed, with the addition of Mr. Bullinger's comments on parking on both sides.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we will do a roll call vote here. Mr. Karski?
Aye.
Ms. Dukart?
Aye.
Mr. Bullinger?
Aye.
Mr. Franchuk?
Aye.
Mr. Cordnoy?
Aye.
Chair votes no. Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to the next item. Item 3 is to consider a preliminary plat for the replat of lots 1 through 7, Block 5, Pinecrest First Edition, Pinecrest Second Edition. Mr. Hadley.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I think we've talked about the plat on a number of the issues. I think what we need to do is make sure that, one of the conditions or one of the comments should be on there is that the development agreement literally needs to come in. The final plat and information for engineering to review it needs to come in very soon, like in the next few days. So engineering has adequate time to give you a recommendation on any of the engineering issues, including stormwater, road design, plat layout. There's plat issues that come up. I'd highly suggest that the applicant submit it to the county recorder as well when you have a final version, so they can review it prior to it coming through this process, just so everybody's on the same page when we go through the approval process. Ms. Marshak, did I miss anything?
So,
No, I just wanted to reiterate again that, so we received this final version of the preliminary plat yesterday. And so to review that, get the applicant comments, have them respond to those comments, and get us a final plat, which we can then comment on by
and then
Friday.
respond.
And respond by Friday is really tight. I'm not going to say it's impossible. It could happen, but I just want you to all be aware of that being our time frame with this, to get a final plat with our comments.
So you're saying if that doesn't happen, it can't be on the agenda for city commission, or?
I think what she's, and let me make a stab at it for you. There's certain engineering issues that they're going to look at that take more time. And then every final plat that we have, for the most part, there's a few things that come straggling in with from surveyors or the engineers to make a final plat work. And sometimes that happens in between PZ and city commission. So some of those things we can always recapture. The major issues we don't want to capture in that shoulder area, because we want you guys to see those major issues. So whether or not a plat closes or there's some issues on format and those types of things, quite honestly, every plat you receive or look at, a lot of those change by the time they go to the city commission. So does that kind of capture your major issues are the ones that we need answers for?
We're talking this Friday?
This Friday.
Like, so that gives us 2 business days, basically.
So literally, even if we respond this afternoon, and they respond to us tomorrow, we would have to turn our responses back around, make sure that we agree with their comments, and they would have to provide us a final plat on Thursday or Friday, and we'd have to be able to comment on that
And that would be including getting comments from our outside engineer, right, our consultant? That's just not coming from you, that's gonna be coming from our consultant?
Exactly.
So what you're saying is it's literally
It's
nearly
really
impossible?
It's really tight. It's going to be really tight. And we don't necessarily have to have everything hammered out. I mean, we can work on some of those things before it's brought forward to you. But we need to make sure that we have a product that's worth putting out for advertisement within the rest of this week.
Just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, as well, the advertisement is one thing when it gets noticed. The real issue and deadlines that we have too are my deadlines to get your packet to you, which is a week in advance. So we have a couple weeks in there of where these items can go back and forth, which we obviously did with this because this report was finished a week ago and sent out to you on the same day. That is our shoulder. I don't like using that all the time, but our process, how we've evolved it in the last year or so, year and a half, has kind of promoted us to do that. It works well for everybody. It doesn't necessarily always work well for staff because it does put us on a pinch. So at the time when I do a review or final review for your packet that goes out, then yeah, I'm going to probably be the one that has to make the call is it tabled or is it not, and in the suggestions. So if we're not to that point. So when I say that Friday or Monday when I do the legal to advertise it for the next PZ meeting, that is that I'm comfortable that we can make that work in that next couple of weeks is really what it means.
Okay. Seems like a
I
fairly...
get mixed emotions here. Should I deny it then?
Engineering's hesitant to move forward because we've had some issues in the past where we've went ahead and the legal description is wrong or something's in error that way and we kind of have to backpedal. And even some of the other plats that we have on today, we've already been in discussion. We maybe aren't at agreement like Mr. Hadley discusses, and we can work through some of those items. But here, we haven't had a chance to even look at the preliminary plat that's in front of you and share any kind of comments back with the applicant. So I'm hesitant on telling you that we can get through this process and give good feedback. I think we could make our best effort to get that, and I'm sure the applicant feels the same way and would tell you that, but it really is a short time frame for us.
With that, and being down one city engineer right now, I'm going to tend to agree with Ms. Marshak and say we table this or deny it at this time. I want to see it done thoroughly and right. We've got a lot of things going on here.
And to address that, Mr. Karski, we do have an engineering firm that is working through a lot of these development items for us, and so I think that is getting taken care of, but just on this one, it is a really short and tight time frame for us, so I wanted to make sure that you're aware.
Okay. Commissioners?
We got to do a denial or
Table
we
it.
can't table.
We could table
Oh,
it.
we-
Correct?
Mr. Chairman, I think you can table, actually, if you choose to do so.
Mr. Carlson?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, if we approve today, it's unknown whether we can meet this future deadline. Nobody's guaranteeing that. You guys aren't guaranteeing that to us today. But as far as a preliminary plat before you, as far as a preliminary plat to approve today, to me would not be a problem. It's just the future one. There's no promise that we're going to be on the next agenda. unless some mountains move here, but.
I mean, for me, it's just really sloppy. I mean, we haven't even commented on the preliminary plat, and here we are approving it. I mean, we haven't even got staff to fully comment on it. And to me, it's just, we're putting the cart in front of the horse here. I mean, it's a process, and it doesn't sound like we're going to make the deadline anyway, so. I mean, with us using an outside consultant, we have to coordinate with them to get us the comments. That's got to get to Ms. Marshak and out, and they've got to respond and get those back to the consultant for responses. I mean, it's just, whatever your wishes are, commissioners.
If we table it, it'll be on the agenda for the next meeting.
That's correct.
And if we deny it,
They'd have to reapply and reapply by the same deadline that I just gave you, Friday and Monday.
and it wouldn't be on the agenda for next meeting.
Well, if they got an application, if you denied it,
Okay.
they'd have to get
Sure.
an application to me
Starting over.
by
from scratch.
Friday, and I'd have to do a new legal and put it in. I mean, honestly, my suggestion, if you're looking at those options, I would table it, and because we've already noticed it, it's time certain, we already know, we already noticed it again, so if anybody's tuned in, watching, or whatever, they know where we are in the process, and we aren't really after doing more legals, just to do more legals.
Yeah, I don't know that we would deny it, because, I mean, I don't think we need to make them reapply. I think that there's just a lot of unanswered questions, so I think tabling would be the proper. And then my next question is do we still have to have the public hearing for the motion to table?
My recommendation would be, considering no substantive action would be taking on the motion to table, that you have the public hearing when the preliminary plat comes back with those comments, because you're going to have a more substantive discussion at that public hearing at the next meeting.
Okay.
So I have to put that on in the motion?
No, you just need a motion to table.
I'll just make a motion to table it.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Dukart to table it to the next meeting.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Franchuk. Any further discussion?
Sorry, just one more point here. So we've been working through the plat here, and maybe one thing that, the reason it got, we didn't get to, we got you the updated one here this week. We had the original one was as a private drive. That was what was submitted, and so as we've been working through the various issues, that's the reason why you got it this late, is we're trying to accommodate all the issues. Being a preliminary plat, it is preliminary, and so we've worked through all that we know how, and this is the best version that we've given you, and we've had a lot of discussions with staff. They've seen this, and they've helped craft it to where it is today. So there's still time for the final to work out the little details, but the overall concept has been looked at a lot by staff. So that's my plug. So.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson.
Well, here's the problem. We didn't even know about this until we got the packet, you know? I went through it all, and all these changes we want to make. I'm comfortable leaving it with my motion.
Okay. Any other comments, commissioners, before we call the vote? Okay, we have a motion and a second to table it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to our next item on our agenda. Item 4 is a final plat. To consider a final plat for the Horner Second Subdivision located in the southeast quarter of Section 23, Township 140 North, Range 96 West, along 34th Street Southwest in the city of Dickinson, North Dakota, ETZ. Mr. Hadley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a ETZ plat, 10.4 acres, as you said, along 34th Street Southwest. It's basically a large lot split out of a number of parcels that basically legitimizing a parcel so it can be a buildable parcel. It would have met the intent of going through our irregular plat or administrative process if that entire area was platted, but it's not. So I believe the applicant has a representative here. I haven't received any comments on this from the public to date, and staff would definitely encourage it to be approved as long as they meet the conditions of approval.
Okay. Please state your name for the record.
Bob Prosiv, surveyor, interstate engineering, in regard to Horner Second subdivision. Pat and Jan Horner, the purpose of this is they built a new house. Pat's got some health issues. They built a new house that's ADA capable. They're selling their old house. That caused creating this parcel, lot 1, block 1 of Horner Second, and in visiting with engineering on the road right away, I believe we agreed on 50 feet because there's so much improvements against 34th Street.
I don't know that we actually came to agreement. Part of what we're bringing forward today is that from our comp plan, we would require 75 foot of right-of-way. This is along a section line, so there's already the standard easement along that, but it is an extension of what would be city's 40th Street East on the north portion of town. I don't know if you have feelings on wavering from that because this is so rural and it is a single lot. But I know in the past when things were heavy with development, we had issues obtaining right-of-way, or it was very expensive. And so part of the reason for doing the comp plan and looking at the future of what our major corridors were going to be, this was noted as one of those corridors, and that's why we had asked the applicant for 75 feet of right-of-way. And so we've had some discussions back and forth on that because it would change the size of the lot or the portion of the property taken out of the larger lot to gain enough acreage to have 5 acres and that 75 foot of right-of-way.
The other problem with the 75 foot of right-of-way, there's a little teeny tiny parcel right at the southwest corner of this lot that there's a water well on that was drilled when the radar base was active. This well is still a well. The person that owns that little property is wanting to sell that well to somebody. So the problem with this here is, yeah, 75 feet, but there's this well that's hanging right off the 33 foot. So, you know, if the planning and zoning wants 75, I can put the 75 in there, but all I'm saying is I was just trying to protect a lot of the improvements that the Horners have done to this lot. It's a beautiful lot. Trees are wonderful. If we got to have 75, well, I guess that's the way it goes. But with that too, you know, title goes to the section line, so they still have 5 acres, but it's just encumbered by the right-of-way.
The improvements would be there unless we would come forth in the future and expand that, but the right-of-way we would already own. So we would not need to acquire that at some point in the future if this road expands.
We just had a similar situation at our last meeting, or 2 meetings ago. And I think we required it. I mean, this is just one of those deals that, yeah, it's kind of on our outskirts here, but it's the future again, and you know, it's in our comp plan. Do we start waiving these things and then put a burden on the future if the city grows out to that, you know, that area?
I can put it back to 75.
So
I think we set a precedent when we did Mr. Arthod, so we got to stick with it.
Yes.
other than that, Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Prosid?
Does that have to be included?
I'd make that a condition.
I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission
Do we-
recommend.
Do we have to have a public hearing on this?
Oh.
Gotta hold off here a second. Okay, with that, we will open up the public hearing to consider this final plat request. Anyone in the public has any comments or concerns regarding this final plat request, please step forward or call in on 456-7006.
The conference is currently empty. You will hear silence or music on hold when connected.
Anyone in the public want to make comments regarding this final plat? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Commissioners, I'd look for a motion.
I'll start again. I don't know if you can hear me because my mic is not working. I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the proposed corner second subdivision preliminary/final plat as depicted in attachment A and meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of public health, safety, and welfare and includes a 75-foot right-of-way.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion, Commissioners? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to our next item. Is to consider a final plat for the Alvarado subdivision located in the northwest quarter of Section 29, Township 140 North, Range 96 West, along 34th Street Southwest in the city of Dickinson, North Dakota, ETZ. Mr. Hadley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is obviously another ETZ plat, and this one was on the top of my list with my notes. So I called the last one incorrectly a 10.4 acre parcel. This one is a 10.4 acre parcel. The last one was 5. Very similar. It's also along 34th. And just trying to legitimize building sites. I believe we'll probably have the same type of discussion on the right-of-way. With that, I believe the applicants have the same representative, and we can move into discussion with him.
Welcome back.
Again, Bob Procio, Surveyor, Interstate Engineering. Pablo Aviero and his family are wanting to build a house on this 10 acres. We've adjusted the right-of-way along the avenue to the west to 75 feet. I have not heard back from the engineering if they want right-of-way extended on the north line. However, on the north line, that road dead ends against Davis Buttes. So there's 33-foot right-of-way there. There's farm fields back there. However, there are a couple anticipated parcels back there, and if engineering would want that wider, it's understandable.
This again falls on our same argument from the previous one. It's noted that we would request 75 feet. We recognize Mr. Prosov's argument, but in following the comp plan, that is what we would request on both the north and the west side.
No problem.
And he said the west side, I believe you had already agreed to.
You're okay with that, Mr. Prosov?
Yes, no problem.
Okay. All right. Commissioners?
And Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, the east of there, as Mr. Posa said, there are some other things going on there that would warrant us to actually look at that. Probably, in my opinion, more so than even the other. So, they're probably a good call.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Prosov on this one?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Prosov. I would look for...
Public hearing.
Oh, sorry. We'll open the public hearing regarding this final plat. If anybody in the public has any comments or concerns regarding the Alvarado subdivision, please come forward or call in at 456-7006.
The conference is currently empty. You will hear silence or music on hold when connected.
Anyone in the public or online that would like to comment, please come forward. All right, seeing no one, we will close the public hearing, and Commissioners, I'd look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the proposed Alvarado subdivision preliminary final plat as depicted in Attachment A and meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of public health, safety, and welfare with the 75-foot requirement, as mentioned.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Franchuk. Any further discussion, Commissioners? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to item 6. This is to consider proposed amendments to Section 39.05.051 Downtown Overlay District boundaries and Section 39.05.055 Downtown Overlay District Development Standards of the Dickinson Municipal Code. Mr. Josephson is handling this. Looks like.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, it's me. We've talked long enough that Stephen had a doctor's appointment. So
Okay. Mr. Hadley, then.
He got to leave. Last month, we talked about this. This just extends the boundary of a district that we excluded from this when we were talking about an event center downtown. It preserves the use of single-family homes and gives them the right to be sold and financed and repaired as is and replaced. So this district, and it is a public hearing because we're expanding this district to include that area, just would allow that and would extend that downtown district. There are a number of homes. I'm sure Ms. Dupart has probably looked at a few. There's a few handfuls of homes that have not sold in that area because of that, because of their existing zoning and the inability to do it. We don't see a great migration of commercial, but if it does go to commercial use totally, then those homes do go away. So they lose that status. So it's kind of a win-win at this point for not only the city, but the homeowners in that area, and that it gives them flexibility. They can buy and sell and improve their homes, but they can't, once it goes to commercial, it does go to commercial. So
Okay.
with that, we haven't had any comments from the public on this, from either our workshop discussions or the public notice, and staff would recommend approval.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hadley. Any questions for Mr. Hadley before I open the public hearing? Okay, hearing none, we will open the public hearing regarding the proposed amendments to the Downtown Overlay District and Downtown Development Standards. Anyone in the public have any comments, please step forward or dial in on 456-7006.
The conference is currently empty. You will hear silence or music on hold when connected.
Anyone in the public regarding the amendment to the Downtown Overlay District or Downtown Development Standards, please come forward. All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Commissioners, I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the revised plan to the Downtown Overlay District.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Karski. Second by Ms. Dukart. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, well, that ends our action items for the day and moves us to item 1 in our work session, which we have about 20 minutes, so I think they have another meeting that they had to push back already for us. So 41st East Villard Street enforcement discussion. Ms. Wanko, I'm probably going to handle the start of that.
Correct. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, subsequent to the last meeting we had in June, Ms. Marshik and Mr. Hadley and I had an opportunity to have a conference call with the representatives with AT&T to bring them up to speed on the city's condition and position, regarding these enforcement issues. We had a very frank conversation with the representatives, informing them that this board was not pleased with how this had been handled specifically with how the construction had moved forward without following the appropriate process. We also made comments during that meeting that I informed them that I would be coming forward based on last meeting that we had, that there was a very good likelihood that I would, as the city prosecutor, be filing criminal charges against them for violations of the zoning code, which is allowed whenever a building permit is not obtained prior to construction. So they understood that. I said and also informed them that there was a good possibility that there would be fines and fees associated with that filing of those criminal charges. Those representatives seem to understand that. I think that we had further conversations within that meeting about what they needed to do to become in compliance, the deadlines that they had to meet. I know that Mr. Hadley has sent them some follow-up information, as well as dealing with some other encroachment issues that Ms. Marshick was also involved in. So at this juncture, I plan on moving forward with filing of those criminal complaints. That will run its process through municipal court. I think the next question is, and Mr. Hadley can inform you as to where it is in the process, what will happen with their application that they are going to submit or have submitted, and how that will work its way through the system. Because at this juncture, I see them two separately different issues. We have to deal with what was done in the past and how we rectify that situation, as well as they want to move forward. So what does that process look like? What does that plan mean and involve? So I will turn it over to Mr. Hadley so he can give you an update on where they are at with their process of reapplying and what we can expect to see for a timeline moving forward.
Thank you, Ms. Minko. Where they are is they've submitted a new application. It isn't complete. They haven't addressed the structure of the building or the improvements and the repairs totally with the owners. Last week I reached out to them, let them know that the time was running short. We've talked a number of times about the date for my next advertising, which is next Monday. So they have till Friday to work with that property owner. And as of last week, they hadn't reached out to them, which was surprising to me. But they had a plan for repairs that the building owner actually submitted to them. So we're waiting on the final facade and the improvement plan to come in, and without that, that is one of the main conditions that we were waiting on before when we tabled it 2 or 3 times. So we do have some different people we're dealing with. Attorney Winko said we met with talked with their legal folks, and you know, now the person that was processing the application is no longer there. So I have a new person, and that person didn't know where we were and everything else. So I've been funneling information back and forth to them. He gets it. I think he understands that we have a timeline, but if I don't have it, let's say Monday morning, first thing in the morning, so I can get it legal to the paper by noon, it will not be on your September agenda. And I can't. I don't have control over that part of it. I will do my best. If I get it, it'll be on there. If I don't get it, I can't put it on there.
Okay. Thanks for the update. I guess we move forward on the legal side. And
Correct. I think we're going to do that regardless of what happens with their subsequent application. The other thing that I do believe that the city has the ability to do as we move forward with the criminal side of it is the potential and the possibility of looking at having the structure abated and removed. I think that can run concurrently with the application process, because the court process has to run its course as well. So I think that will be something that we will discuss as that process moves forward, that is an option that we have available to us within the court process with city court. So I will keep Mr. Hadley in the loop and keep informed on that, but we do intend to move forward with this as I have previously discussed.
President Frederick?
Oh,
yeah.
I just wanted to speak on the encroachment issue that was brought up in previous discussions. The applicant had reached out with the Federal Highway Administration, who threw it back to our local DOT representative, who then shared that it is on the city to whether they want to permit encroachments or not. So I think moving forward with this new application, as far as an engineering standpoint, if that's something that you wanted to permit, we could do that without impacting our federal highway funding.
At this time, other than them failing to apply correctly, I mean, it's against some portion of our ordinance, having this antenna on the building too, is it not?
My understanding in visiting with city staff and also visiting with building official Schwint, that there is a possibility that it is not consistent with our zoning code. So obviously, if we come to that juncture, then we would have to look at either a variance of some sort, or you give permission to operate outside of the code. And I would welcome Mr. Schwint's comments to that effect if he wants to add something. But my recommendation, because this process involves 3 departments, it involves Mr. Hadley, Ms. Marshik, and Mr. Schwint, that everybody get on the same page. When this comes back around, I want to see everybody focused on the city in understanding that this is what the city thinks is appropriate, and everybody's on the same page with that.
Mr. Schwint, did you have any comments?
Mr. Chairman, board members, I agree with Ms. Winkle, is that reviewing this and what they've provided, they would not get a building permit if they came in today, based on they exceed the square footage of the dishes or satellites per our code. Plus our corridor overlay district, this board would have to, whether or not that meets our overlay district as far as that zoning also would be something to consider.
So they would have to ask for a variance first?
They would have to ask for a variance to exceed the square footage for the square footage of the dishes or plates that they have up there, panels.
And that would go to a different board first then, correct? I'd go to the
Board of Adjustment.
Board of Adjustments first then? Okay.
So in my opinion, they knew that they weren't in compliance, so they just put it out.
I can't answer that.
It's a big company. I used to work there.
All right. Anything else, commissioners or staff, regarding this? Okay.
Figure out what they bring in.
All right, sounds good. We'll anxiously await our next discussion. All right, we'll move on to item 5 on the agenda. This would be items not on the agenda. Does anybody have anything that's not on the agenda they'd like to bring up at this time? Okay, hearing none from the commissioners. Item 6 would be public issues of city concern not on the agenda. So anybody in the public that has anything that's not on the agenda that they'd like to bring up, this would be the time to come forward. Seeing none, we'll move to item 7 and look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.